Hey everybody, it's your man Tyke coming to you with another true spook story. Now, before we begin, I would like to ask you guys to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share me with those who just want a nice spooky story to listen to that's 100% true. Now, without further ado, today we're going to talk about a person that I grew up with, a female, known in the community as Galloping Gale. We called her two different names, Galloping Gale or Trotting Gale. So I'm going to go with Galloping Gale because it sounds a little bit more catchy. Well, Galloping Gale, she was a 19-year-old female with the mind of a child. Now, let me be clear when I say with the mind of a child. She was 19, she was fully developed, but her mind was that of an 8-year-old. Now, she didn't look mentally retarded. She didn't act mentally retarded. It's just that her mindset was that of an 8-year-old child. I want to go into detail because this really makes the story so you guys can understand. So, having the body of a grown up, but the mind of a child, being able to be manipulated, influenced, etc. So a lot of the old heads had to watch her closely so the predators in the neighborhood didn't deal with her. And she never had any children, that type of thing. Everybody understood that Gale was not all the way there, not right, depending on how you look at it. And keep in mind, if these terms are offensive to some, this is 20, 30 years ago. So now, Galloping Gale was very easily influenced. And she always smiled, and I remember her face right now. She was well kept. Her parents kept her up. Beautiful teeth, beautiful skin, and she had that bob hairstyle that you get with the straightening comb, not like the weave that people wear today, but just like you could tell when your grandmother, your mother straightened the women's hair, and then they curl it under the end, put the rollers in it, and then let the rollers sit overnight and take them off. And she had this hairdo no matter what season. She always had this ear length cut bob hairstyle with the roll up. So one day, everybody is hanging out, chilling. The neighborhood threw a nice little cookout barbecue, and Gale comes out and she's stunning. She's starting to dress like a grown up with her having an ass and a shape at 19, but with the mind of a child. So this is like, oh shit, now the dope boys, everybody taking a gander at her. The older men sitting up there, yeah, she 19 though. You hear the little slick ass comments and shit. It was sickening. Me, I'm about 14, 15 years old at the time. And so you hear in the comments, and in my mind, she's older than us. We didn't give a shit. We didn't care. But these guys was looking at her. So one day, Gale walked to the store. And I gotta warn you guys that this story is gonna get really abusive to the mentally ill. So bear with me here. But there's a real spooky component to this story that you guys will not see coming at the end. So Gale decides to walk to the store one day. And the store was about 4 or 5 blocks away. So as she's walking to the store, everybody's timing her. It shouldn't take you this long to get up there and get back. So Gale walks to the store. The neighborhood is abuzz because it's been about an hour since she left. So they pay us $5 or $10 to hop on our bikes and follow Gale's tracks because she had to cut through this little wooded area, but it wasn't a big, long wooded area. It was just probably like 12 feet of wooded area that she had to cross over this patch. So we follow the thing, then we run through the path, and we yelling, Gale, 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 Gale. So as we're running through the thing, we don't hear Gale. So we finally get to the store and we ask, one of the Indian guys who owned it, hey, did you see Gale? And he was like, yeah, she came in, but she left about 15, 20 minutes ago. So we're circling around thinking maybe she wanted to explore and go around the area. So let me give you the demographic of the area. So there's this road in Orlando called Orange Center Boulevard. Orange Center Boulevard meets with Tampa Avenue in that area right there. So the the houses in the apartment complex behind it is called Sunset. Sunset Avenue, Sunset Apartments, Sunset Road. Right up the road from Darling Street where me and my family used to live. So it shouldn't have took her long to get there at all. But if you was to go up Church Street, heading down to like you're going to John Young Parkway, but you make a left-hand turn on Ohio, that will take you all the way back around to Sunset Avenue to where she lived. So we assumed she was following the direction on how to get back exploring because we don't know if she ever walked by herself or been there. So we start exploring too. So as we're walking and riding our bikes and yelling out for her, we hear her say, hey. So when she said, hey, there's a set of apartments on Ohio Avenue. As soon as you make that turn, there's a set of apartments on Ohio Avenue. And this guy, he always kept his back door open and he had curtains up. Even you go past his house 2 o'clock in the morning, you could see the light from the TV, but the curtain would always be up and open. The door would be open with just a curtain. You could just walk in and say hi, whatever. So as we're yelling for her, we hear her say, yeah. So we follow the yell because we kept yelling. So we see her emerges from his house. So when she emerges from her house, her pants is unbuttoned. So we look at her and she's all happy and stuff. And smiling. So we like, your mom and them say come home. So she gets on the handlebars of one of our bikes and we ride her home. Funny ass scene. So as we're leaving, the guy peeks his head out the kitchen window. So I guess he know he's fucked up. He's in trouble because I'm snitching. We all snitching because everybody knew Gale was not all the way there. He's taking advantage of a 8-year-old and a 19-year-old woman with an 8-year-old mindset. So we get around there and we blabs to my mom, to my grandma. We blabs to the neighborhood people. Old man Jimmy around there is sexing up old Gale and shit. So, the tough necks, her brothers and whatever, her family member goes around there and they confront Jimmy. And they in his face about to kick his ass and shit. And Jimmy like, oh, I didn't touch her. I didn't have sex with her. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do anything sexual with her. She just was in here. So they're like, why her pants unbuttoned? Why her pants unbuttoned? And he was like, she said she had to use the bathroom and I let her use the bathroom and that was it. So, they didn't hold the girl down and check her vagina, see was she having sex or nothing, and they threatened him. They like, bitch, if it happen again, we're gonna fuck you up. And we joined in on the party like, you pussy ass nigga, you fucking with a mentally challenged person. You a fuck nigga. We all kids, we saying this and we throwing rocks at his window and shit. We were dicks. So Gale started growing up. Her mindset started changing. Now, I'm telling you this, people, I cannot make this shit up, man. So now, every encounter Gale has with a random stranger or some male in the neighborhood, she gets smarter. And let me give you an example. So now Gale went in there and whatever her and that brother did, it made her more smarter, more woman-like, more feminine. And she comes with a little bit more intelligent. Now she's picking out her own clothes and she's wanting to do things, asking certain questions. So Gale goes to the park, and this is and where Gale lived was right up the road from Lizzie Rogers Park in the Sunset area. So the park opens in the back of Lizzie Rogers Park. So there you go with that scary ass fucking place, haunted ass park. So she says, I'm going to the park to play, going to the park to hang out. So there was a basketball court next to the park before they tore it down. And so, again, she has a fly shape on her. This is where the neighborhood toughs hang out at. So she's gotten the ball and she's playing basketball on the court. They open up the court for her, let her play a little bit. You know, all of them looking at her like, man, I hit that. And you hear the same old story. But she got the brain of an 8-year-old, man. Like, I don't know, that big ain't right because that big got a porcelain. She 20, 19, 20 years old. She can fuck. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So she sat down at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's getting nighttime. So everybody come out, hey, Gale, get in the house. Gale, get in the house. Her mom and her grandma come out yelling, screaming for her to come in the house. But Gale is nowhere to be found, and Gale don't go to the house. So her mom and her grandma and I think it was her uncle, walked down to the park, and they're looking for her. So Gale emerges from behind a tree after giving one of the tough guys oral sex because her knees was dirty from what everybody was saying. So the neighborhood, that guy, he wasn't from the neighborhood. He was from Orange Center Apartments, not from Sunset. So, everybody chased him out the park and like, I'll whoop your ass. So now they saying, these guys taking advantage of Gale. We got to keep watch of her. Okay, here we go. So Gale goes back in the house. Nobody chastises her. She just smiling and acting crazy. Notice the key word I said, acting. So the next day, or after the next encounter, she gets smarter. So you guys know where this story is going. So now she gets smarter. She's not acting like a 9-year-old anymore. She's now acting like she's in her teens, 13, 14. At 13, 14, girls get to smelling themselves, wanting the new hairstyle, writing letters, the hearts and drawing hearts on their clothes and shit with pens. Do you love me? SOL. XOX, that type of shit. So a couple months pass. Gale is still walking around, the star of the show, young black girl ass, but she's still mentally disabled. So now Gale is being approached by men, and she is understanding that there's a such thing as sexuality. So the parents couldn't watch Gale. They had to go to work, and Gale would, the special needs bus would drop her off. She would go in the house, change clothes, whatever, and she would come out and she would be playing with everybody. So when Gale disappears, we know that she's either in somebody's house, in the apartment complex, or around the corner behind the bush because she had developed a taste for sexual activity. But every time she had sex, she got smarter, people. So imagine the summer. Gale has had about 8 dicks now. Sucked them, fucked them, I don't know. She done had about 8 dicks. She started off as a 8-year-old brain girl with a 19-year-old body, to now she's about 16, 17. Her mentality is catching up with her femininity. So now I gave you the scene of how this worked. So now I'm going to get into the creepy and the spooky part of this shit. So every time Gale would go and have sex or do some sexual act, she would save the semen of the male and she would bring it home and she would put it in a jar. She would spit it out, drain it out of her vagina. I don't know, scrape it out of her underwear. I don't know. I'm just telling you what my grandma was telling me from what her grandma told my grandma. And said that they went in there and they said she had the center of her panties was all cut up and put in a magical jar. They had semen and spit in a jar and just semen that dripped out of her like a girl go sit over the toilet after you get through running up in her raw and she have to pee the shit out. Said Gale was doing this. So Gale was in there working magic to make herself smarter. Who taught her this? I don't know. Everybody say the old man Jimmy up the front who kept his doors open, he was like a witch man, but not so much. As kids, we didn't care, but grandma knew the deal. I think she made a deal with him, and she was doing magical spells because she was happy. And so now she's 19. She's doing all the spell work. She's becoming smarter. They getting disability for her. She don't want the disability. She's saying how she want a baby. She's talking to the dope boys at the park. She's just a totally different person now. She got all this ass to shake, ass and tits to shake, and she has the mindset to go with it. So now it's not immoral to deal with her for the older guys. So now she's making older girlfriends. She's like, hey, I'm 20 years old, 19 years old. I want to go to the club. I want to go explore. I want to go to fantastic skating ring and skate. Cool. So her parents couldn't stop her because she had sense. She exhibited that she was smart enough to handle herself. So during that time, a lot of young male boys was coming up missing. And people, this is in Orlando, Florida, 1992, 93. Look up your missing person, young males in that area. Orlando area, Sunset, Orange Center, Mercy Drive. I can't make this shit up. So every time she would go out to the Sam L. Smith Center or Fantastic Skating Ring, she would link up with these guys and she would have sex, but these guys was coming up missing that she was dealing with. You don't know where they at, where they been, what they're going through. So everybody's coming up missing. Everybody like, hey man, if you sit up there and fuck with Gale, you're gonna run, you're gonna leave. Like you're gonna disappear. So she developed a reputation for if anybody was to have sex with her, like they either lose their mind and go crazy, or they just come up missing or go wandering in the woods around the neighborhood or just disappear altogether. So, God, I hate to say this. So Gale had started developing features like a horse. Like she went from being this pretty 19-year-old girl to like this buck-toothed, pigeon-toed, high-ass, horse-legged girl. And either her walk got stank and cute and all that shit, and it was unique in the hood. But she stopped looking like herself. So nobody could recognize her anymore. So she was still going to the club, messing around with people. And now I'm becoming 18, 19 years old. I'm starting to understand sexuality. And I'm like, that don't look like that good looking girl from the day. This bitch looked demonic, horse shaping. I mean, she had put gold teeth in her mouth. And she's about 22 years old now. She got gold teeth in her mouth. She got earrings in her nose and the big bangle hoops. And she's just doing her thing. She just don't look the same. And every guy that she was dealing with was disappearing. So one day she met, I want to say his name was Ricky Smiley, not the radio host for 94.5. He was like Ricky Smiley or Ricky Spivey, one of those two. And so she goes and she gets to talking to him and she's flirting with him, and he has a Chevy car and they're driving. So she sexes him up in the middle of the driveway because she just had to have sex. She just had to get it. And it's broad daylight and you can see their car going at it by the basketball court, and everybody knew what she was doing in there. So all of a sudden she would get out the car and she would take off running at an extremely high speed. And she was fast, man. She was fast, real fast. So everybody was like, look at that bitch trot. She's a trotter's bitch. The old heads, they start coming up with names for her. And the kids called her Galloping Gale. So after she get through fucking and taking the guy's semen, she would get up and she would run. And she would run back to her house, go in there and clean up whatever. However, no matter how far she was, she would not let him drive her back. She would take off running, and she had got to have the bitch had to have great stamina. And so we nicknamed her Galloping Gale because every time you seen her come around that corner running full speed, everybody said, "Oh, she just must fuck somebody." My grandma was like, "That bitch is a danger to society." My grandma used to always be like, "Boy, don't none of y'all fuck that hoe, because you either gonna die from AIDS or that bitch is a danger to society. She'll take every seed you got and make herself smarter and make them retarded ass kids she gonna have smarter, because that bitch ain't right. That hoe's just so janky." And her grandma and them janky too, because they know what the bitch doing. My grandma used to like really lay into them. I don't know why grandma didn't like them. So fast forward a little bit, everybody calling her Galloping Gale. So all of a sudden, police detectives is going around saying what's happening to these guys. Why is these young black men disappearing out of the middle of the hood? Guys with cars, they find the cars parked, and these guys are just like dead. They were found like 2 or 3 with self-inflicted gunshot wounds, or they got drunk and walked in the middle of traffic and got hit by a car. I mean, it got really bad. And I don't know if you can remember, and check this out on the news, around by that time, a lot of people was just walking in front of traffic for no reason within the Orlando area. Young Parkway, Silver Star Road, Ivy Lane, Sunset Boulevard. They'll just get up and just out of nowhere just walk into the road and get hit by a truck or car. They would be driving that car and they would just crash into a building. You know, and all of them were like, "Oh, he was just with Gale," and they would tell the police, "Oh, he went to the movies with Gale, or he had sex with Gale, or he fucking with Gale." So it became in the neighborhood that Gale was. It became a neighborhood that Gale was, the one killing these people with magic, and taking their seeds and taking their brain and doing all that type of shit. So my grandma used to like always come over there when I came to the Sunset neighborhood. She would always like rub our heads with olive oil and anoint us with Florida water and things, and be like, "So that janky bitch don't see you and like you, because y'all some good looking boys." And so we'd laugh and shit, because we knew she was fucking everything, so we knew not to touch it. So one day, Gale approaches my cousin Robert, and me and Robert, we're like 4 days apart. So she approached Robert. We 18, 19 years old. I'm not having sex yet. Well, I'm not really having sex yet. Yeah, I had just had sex with that lady from across the street from my mom. And so cousin Robert, he was sitting up there and he was like, "Dude, I'm finna hit this bitch." And I said, "Didn't grandma just motherfucking tell you the hoe gonna drive you crazy, and you still trying to run cock up in a, oh, I will come the bitch. I got me old Trojan." I said, "Man, don't do that shit." And she like, "Come in the house. Come here. Come over here." And he went to walking across the street. People, let me tell you, I ran so fast up that driveway and beat on my grandma's window, and I said, "Robert is over there in Galloping Gale's house." My grandma walked out of that motherfucker with her titties swinging and her nightgown on, with nothing on under that bitch, and the wind caught up and you could see nothing but ass and bush, old grandma. And grandma went over there and she kicked that door. She's like, "Gale, you bitch, open that door. Open the door, you bitch. Leave my grandson alone, you bitch. Leave him alone, you bitch." And Gale was like, "You need to go on. You need to go on somewhere. You need to go on somewhere, Gunja. Gunja, you need to go on. Get out of here. He grown." And my grandma was like, "Oh, I'll blow your head off." And she took out her pistol. Where she got it from, I don't know. Keep in mind the wind blowing, ass and tits. Bush and tits, I should say. And so Robert came to the door, and grandma slapped him in the face with the pistol. "You dumb bitch, didn't I tell you the hoe gonna take your soul and have you murder yourself? The bitch gonna kill you." And he was like, "Grandma, you tripping with that shit. That shit don't make no sense, grandma." Because Robert was disrespectful. He would curse his grandma, his own mama. Robert was a motherfucker. She's like, "Well, bitch, I'd rather end your life than let her end it." And grandma cocked the pistol and pointed at his ass. "Now let me see you here again. I bet I kill your ass. I love you just that much." And he's like, "Man, I'm getting out of here." So cousin Robert hopped in his little car and hauled that. And Galloping Gale looked at me like, "You snitch motherfucker." And I just shook my head like, "Fuck you, lady. You ain't finna kill my cousin." So grandma went home and started throwing shit. Now people, listen to what I'm finna tell you. Keep in mind this lady had already started developing horse features. Grandma went home and start stirring up the pot. And I saw grandma go to the Chinese store and get some hair weave. The kind that the girls wear in a ponytail like a horse. Grandma came home and grandma fashioned a doll that looked just like Galloping Gale. I kid you not. She molded that clay. She did everything. She spit on that doll. She took a piss on that doll in the toilet. Grandma fucked that doll up, and I'm sitting in the house listening and watching her talk about why she doing all this shit. So I'm finna give you a spell, right? And this is the exact original spell. I can remember this. So grandma boiled some molasses, not syrup. It was when molasses came in the jar. She got it from the Palmer's feed store. She boiled some molasses on the stove. After she had got through doing the doll, she dipped the doll in the molasses with some hot dog tongues. Lift the doll out, covered it good. Let the doll boil in there, covered it good. And she let it dry. And when she let it dry, she hung it up on a tree behind her house. Now, hanging the thing up on a tree behind her house, she made sure where like squirrels and beavers couldn't get to it, but she wanted the flies to blow it. I'm finna tell you some shit, boy. Magic is real. Grandma didn't fuck off, and Galloping Gale got what she needed. So the only part didn't get dipped in the molasses is the weave that she had sewed onto the doll head. So grandma hung it in the tree so not all the blowflies coming around and flying on her and shit. So grandma say, that'll keep that bitch distracted. I bet she won't be stealing no more seeds. So we didn't think nothing of it. The dog back there, I knew it. So we see Galloping Gale walking up the road trying to sell her coochie, trying to do whatever, trying to get some more essence, right? And she just keep like fanning her face like, ooh, these flies. And she keep spitting like blowing with these flies, fanning and swiping her hair and shit. And I'm looking like, the fuck grandma just did? And so Galloping Gale, and out of nowhere, she would just take off running real fast. And everybody like, is she running a track or something? And she, out of nowhere, she would be fully dressed, thought high heels and everything. And she'd just throw them up and take off running up the road. And she would run back and forth, galloping up and down Sunset Road. And she did that for years and nobody knows. So they were like, okay, now she turning back crazy. She had some sense. Now she converting back to being a 8-year-old cherry brain person or nothing. Didn't know my grandma went back there and worked that magic on that girl to stop her from taking these boys' soul and killing these boys like she was doing. So now that's the story of Galloping Gale. That's 100% true. If you go to Orange City Boulevard, and you in Orange Center Boulevard, Mercy Drive, or Sunset Avenue, and you ask them about Galloping Gale, they'll tell you about a lady about 32 years ago that they suspected her to be in like a serial sexaholic killer, but she just ran up the road, and she used to run up the road everywhere. She died crazy because she never got a car. She used to always walk. She walked everywhere. Sometimes she would have on shoes, sometimes she didn't. But we always remember, even as an adult when I seen her, we always remember this buck-toothed woman walking up the road with no shoes. And she would just be always swapping for flies. My grandma never removed that doll. And to this day, I think my grandma saved a lot of men from that girl taking their souls and their essence. Because she had been doing this for like 4 or 5 years. Now back to the police investigation. So when they came up to Gale, they was like, well, these guys are dying because of you. What are you doing? And I think it was like, the police was saying something along the lines where like, you're convincing these people like a cult leader, like manipulation. I forget the charge that they was trying to say. But she played the crazy role in her grandma. This girl crazy. They were taking advantage of her. Maybe they felt guilty. But we all knew that lady was convincing them boys to do it because once you take their essence in their soul, they felt empty, hollow, and alone. My grandma used to explain this to us all the time. So nothing ever came from it. Them boys are still dead over there in the cut. Unsolved deaths. I mean, Google this shit. A lot of people was walking in front of cars getting run over. A lot of boys was coming up missing at around by the same time. And it was all due to Galloping Gale. That last track of Orchard was Orange Center Boulevard. Literally Sunset Boulevard up the road from where Gale house was. We had the apartments across the street on Dollins. Sunset is right there. Gale was right there. I'm like, this shit got so crazy. So there you have it, people. That's the story of Galloping Gale or Trotting Gale. You choose how you want to say it, whichever rolls off the tongue better. Grandma did a spell and saved everybody's life by turning that lady into a horsewoman to save a lot of these men's life. And because they start fucking with her grandchildren, she wasn't having that shit. And just like with the bitch had the horse features, my grandma would say, she turned that bitch into a horse-featured motherfucker and had horse issues. Now, her hair grew long as fuck. Gail had some pretty long motherfucking hair down to her back, just like a horse tail. But she died saying flies was blowing on her, and she would just take up running for no reason. Galloping Gale, that's what they call her. She still died with a great body. Motherfucker was fine. Pigeon-toed, horse leg, high ass. You lean forward when she walked, she had it going on. But she had them buck teeth and that horse-like face and them horse-like movements. And we didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was funny, but everybody used to be like, oh, buck tooth bitch. And they were saying shit like that. Gail didn't care. Gail was looking for somebody to fuck, man. She was trying to get her essence to get her mind right, but she started degenerating again. Back down to low-level intellect because she couldn't feed that demon jar that she had in her house. And my grandma saved the day. Well, that's all I'm going to tell you about that one there, man. And I do appreciate you guys for listening. So that was the story of Galloping Gale. I'm tight, saying everything ain't a race. But sometime when you get to the goddamn finish line, let's hope that the horse don't mount you. All right, everybody. I'm tight, telling y'all to have a great one. Stay safe. God bless.